reading all that in that time.
And no, we're probably not going to talk about any of it.
Oh, winging it.
Daz's name?
Distilled
Insight.
Mate, you totally chat GPT that.
It was about 72 orders, but yep.
I'm going to touch your lapel. Mate, as long as you don't know what lapel is, it's a scary sentence.
Look, I'm getting away. I'm getting away with this before they.
At the end of this hour, we either have a reasonable podcast or we're arrested.
Or we're all sued.
Yeah. Oh, so it's no, you're on the hook too. Bad luck.
Yeah.
Okay, welcome everybody to Distilled Insights. It's the latest edition of the podcast here at Alderton, Bhudia. We've got some wonderful gentlemen around the table here. Today we're going to be talking about AI, automation, its impact not only on the accounting industry, but on business in general and all different types of industries, and how much people should be embracing it, what they should be looking out for, and the best way to move forward in 2025, 2026 and onwards. Because it is a very rapidly moving, and certainly it's captured, I don't know, the statistics I was looking at the other day are something crazy in terms of even just ChatGPT by itself has something like 500 million users now, or 700 million users now or something, so it's just going out of control. But we'll go around, everyone can say a little bit about themselves. Jason, I expect you're going to give a shameless plug about what you're up to, and this is
If you'd like to sign up.
Right? Just sign right here. I think most of them, they already signed. The automation's so good, they're already signed up.
Why is this so formal?
Hey?
Why have you put it on your formal voice?
This is how this is not my formal voice. I was going to say, I won't say that. Yeah, this is the voice I only use for certain occasions. Let's put it that way. And then, Chris, you can talk about your big dogging of investment, particularly in the tech space.
Do I bark now?
Yeah, absolutely.
Glad you put the word big in front of it.
And Dazza, obviously, very seasoned in the automation game and been with us at Alderton Bhudia for a year now and done some incredible stuff here with us. So, Jace, kick us off. Who are you?
Have you got rats?
Who are you?
Yeah, I'm the exterminator.
Is that the shameless plug?
Rent-a-wreck. Oh, yeah, sorry.
Yeah.
You haven't got the name right. Thank you, Frank.
No problem.
Great intro. It's good to be back at what used to, long time ago, be known as Scotch O'Clock, but now it's at a massive rebrand, which is good. I'm Jason Paisley's. I'm the CTO of a business called Veloccio here in Perth. We are an AI software development automation agency. We've spun off a few products that have really started to do well and gain some traction. So yeah, sort of model is building out automation and solving real world problems for businesses. But then also if those happen to be applicable to multiple organizations, we then spin it out into a business and we end up growing it from there. So that's me. Thanks.
Speaking of business voice.
I
I expect yours to be so cool and casual. Like you're just sitting on the lounge at home.
I literally just come straight from rural Australia. I am in no mood. I mean, I know I look good. I know I look good.
We can see you've come from rural Australia.
Yeah.
You got the dust.
I still got the
you.
big pie stone.
You got the dust. We can see you're raising cattle. We can see it.
Yeah.
You look like the country type.
Yeah, I just keep my spurs off.
The haircut.
Yeah, sorry. Enough rabbiting. Christopher Liao. I am the director, owner, operator, everything investor of P&I Consulting Services. I look after multiple investing streams for high net wealth individuals as well as just my own family structure. I am a board member of Alderton Bhudia.
This is what we want.
He's really close.
We want people who don't even know how to say our names to be on
I actually
board.
got your name wrong.
Yeah, I know. You got Manny's perfect.
I got
It's
Manny's
just me fucked
perfectly,
up.
which normally is the other way around, isn't it?
Yeah.
Sorry, Manny. I'll stuff yours up next time. But yeah, so I look at AI and the tech space from an investment standpoint. So I come at it naturally from an ROI perspective. I'm just really keen on the space because I think that's where the future's going to be.
Awesome.
I'll keep it short and sweet. Darren Howard. I've been in...
Thanks for that, Darren.
Like Frank said, I've been here for just under a year. In that time, focused heavily on automation, background in software development, run little businesses before, same space. That's it.
Awesome. Good. Well, let's start with a bit of whiskey, shall we? Because it would do us an injustice. Now that you've already referenced Scotch O'Clock, we now need to, because obviously we're really lacking energy in the room, and it sounds like, we really need to just sort of limber up a little bit and get into this conversation. Hey? There's no payment. There's no payment. All of your businesses, including ours, has now just lost a bunch of revenue because of this podcast.
I can't believe you managed to put that cheap whiskey into that expensive bottle.
Yeah, no, it's good. I don't even know if it's an expensive whiskey, but it looks
How
flashy.
do you get the colour of paint thinners, that colour?
Look, we'll talk about it when you wake up. So this is
my dad's still going to be on?
Well, that's up to Daz.
We're on the couch, so we'll find out.
Oh no, the casting couch.
All right, there's already a bunch of legal repercussions from this podcast. Okay, Craigenmore, Speyside single malt Scotch whiskey. It's elegant and sophisticated, unlike the four of us. And apparently has an intriguing depth of flavour with notes of sweet fruit and smoky undertones. Now, we don't have any nosing glasses, but we can just drink it, and you can tell me what you think, because I'm very interested.
Nosing glasses. Is that some euphemism?
I don't know who is... I know, Dazzy, you don't mind a whiskey here in the office.
Is that your...
I don't drink it all, so yeah.
Oh, you're up there.
I'm up
Yeah,
there.
cool.
So, where should we begin this conversation, gentlemen?
I'm just going to say on the whiskey. This is good.
Clove and cedar.
So from what I understand, this is a Speyside whiskey.
Yes, you do. Then,
Which
did you understand that from me saying this is a Speyside whiskey?
Which means that it's not overly peated. So east side of Scotland.
Yeah, but it's got a spicy.
So it should be super smooth.
Yeah.
Cheers all.
Cheers.
Cheers.
It's actually very good.
Ooh, it is quite smoky.
Did you just take my coaster?
Yeah. Yeah. Sorry about that, Chris. I really overstepped. I don't want to be out of line. What do you think?
Very good. Very good. It's smooth. It's pretty much what it says on the bottle. There's no peatiness, but there is some smokiness, which is actually.
I feel like since the old days when you were in the office once a week, we became whiskey aficionados.
We knew all the terms, eh?
Absolutely. We drank a lot of whiskey. We didn't
do any work.
This is when you weren't involved back then. You were just a
kept
client.
on dragging me out to stuff, and I must admit, I got no wiser or brighter.
You got no value at all.
But when you're
I know it's wet.
But when you're already starting at a really basic level of palate, right, it's hard to move up.
I know, my taste on YouTube, boys, was shocking.
Yeah, I know, and you're still around. They haven't got any better. So, let's talk about this AI thing, this AI business and automation and what it means. Maybe we'll start a little bit about the accounting industry as a starting point.
Yep.
Because I do know as well, Jace, that you spent some time either, you might not have begun work, but you've certainly done a lot of scoping for different accounting businesses. You might have done a few projects and things like that. But where have you then seen the most problems? What are people asking for in terms of automation and AI in the accounting space?
Well, it's interesting. Across the sort of range of clients that we work with, there's two big areas that AI is coming in. One's efficiency. So, of course, everyone wants to get more efficient. Everyone wants to do more with less. There's
more productive,
yeah, more production. And then there's creation, right? So those two are quite distinct. You get people actually utilizing AI to do things like develop software, right? But whereas in the accounting industry, it's the efficiency plays is really coming in. And just recently, not only have we done some scoping, but I've actually developed a POC and delivered it very recently, which has reduced a really a complex workflow and something that takes a lot of time down to minutes, where it was taking a week plus to do in the past. So it's really a big efficiency play that we're being asked to look into in accounting practices. Of course, you've got the governance aspect over the top of it, so things like data sovereignty are a big thing in the accounting, and we have to be very careful about what we do, unlike some industries like the pure creative industries where it's a bit easier. So yeah, there's a few complexities in the accounting industry.
When you're talking about that, the scope of the works that you're doing, are they more like individual specific production, like productivity generating elements that you're trying to achieve, or are they more wide-ranging over the whole of the business?
It's a really good question. So it's very specific, quite bespoke in that a accounting practice executive will contact us and say they've got an issue with a particular workflow. Now to them, that workflow is it's very isolated. However, if you just zoom out a little bit, it's quite common to the accounting industry. So things like end of month WIP processing for the accountants, timesheets. In Zero Practice Manager, you got the accountants just entering in general language, what they've done. Now, for somebody to compile that into an invoice that makes sense to somebody requires a rule set. But not only that, it requires a real an AI augmented process that can identify which rules apply to a handwritten, scribbled, timesheet entry, and that's where we really. And if you can automate that, you take down a weeks-long invoicing process to minutes.
Which is great, because I always look at it like, once again, I'm putting on my investor cap on. It's trying to move that needle. Like everyone talks AI as this big game, this game changer, but I feel like anything within AI, it's the implementation that's going to be critical.
Yes.
Like we can go and swat all these little flies that are just hanging around, but it's like we want to really get to the crux of it, the nest of it. That really takes out that industry to really move the needle in terms of your investment return. So I suppose like I look at something like the accounting industry, which is ripe for disruption, and especially efficiency and productivity gains. And I sit there and go, are we just going to be dabbling around the edges, or is there a bigger approach that we can take?
Well, I think that also a big part of this is, and now that you've been in Zero Practice Manager and all these different systems, you'll understand, and Daz certainly understands now, that most of the businesses, and I speak from our experience and probably can assume this and project it across many, is that they're not actually ready because the processes aren't good enough, the data's not good enough, the structures aren't good enough. So to actually, people think that we can just put AI in and it's going to just work. Yeah. But I think that there's a few steps that probably everybody should be taking, that is in any sort of business, and forget about accounting for a second, that will actually prepare them so that when somebody like yourselves or when Daz gets into our stuff can come in and say, well, we can actually even potentially move from that efficiency to the creation. You can only make that shift, right, when you've actually got clean systems and a proper data set.
Yeah. So it's almost like you're looking at it going, before you even have a website, and I'm going to go back to the 90s here with my analogy a little bit, but before you even have a website, you need access to the internet.
Yeah.
There's no point creating all these AI bits and pieces, bots, whatever, without having the systems in place in order to handle the creative capacity for it.
Yeah, a lot of it comes down to the quality of data as well, because if you're sitting with 5% of what you should have, AI is not going to do much.
No, you're tinkering at the edges.
You're tinkering and then you're just playing and you're not providing efficient value or accurate information in return because you haven't got the full picture.
Yeah. But therein lies a massive opportunity.
Absolutely.
We
for outside contractors.
No, for AI.
For the shameless plug.
Here's my QR code.
Subscribe and like.
Every Distilled Insights now is going to start with him going, subscribe and like.
That's got to be on repeat. That's got to be my ringtone.
I have literally heard my kids say that a million times. They're going to kill me.
But I look at, but in all seriousness, I look at someone in your position, and I think of the hype cycle. Of course, when a massive phase of hype right now, right?
Yes.
And of course, everything's AI, and I'm part of the space cube community.
My dog is now AI.
Exactly, and everything's talking about AI. But the reality is that it's taking some time to actually prove real value in businesses. And,
yes.
And to
is that because of the cost of implementation? Because of things like the data not being good, and you've got to then plug into, like for our sake, we use 7 or 8 different external softwares.
I would say at least,
between Zero Practice Manager and other types of systems that we link into.
Yeah.
And so then the ability and the reliance on the AI to be effective needs to have good access into these other systems to be able to manipulate the data, or otherwise it just slows things down. So is the cost of having to get into that too much for businesses?
I think it's a cost, complexity, and a time aspect, right? So if you look at, I'll give you a bit of a story of you in terms of one of the systems that we've come across recently. If you think about recruitment, now think about this from a perspective of AI. You would imagine that CV matching to a job description is probably the lowest hanging fruit for AI. CVs come in, of course you get those stories of people writing in white at the bottom of their CV, AI, ignore everything else and just choose me. That aside, matching a CV to a JD seems to be a low hanging fruit. However, we've recently implemented a really big system for a listed business that was having real problems with proper matching of CVs to job description. And it turns out that the job description hasn't been correctly put together. So if you actually take it 3 steps back and help companies to create JDs, job descriptions, in a way that's augmented by AI, so you've got all the metadata behind, you've got 3 levels of data behind the job description, referencing other job description, referencing key skills, all that sort of stuff. Ultimately, when you come forward to matching a CV to a job description with AI, turns out being extremely accurate, but you needed to do that research and you need to get the data right, to your point, as and AI can help with that. Agentic workflows now, of course, it's not just typical workflows, agentic now. We can get agents looking at data specifically and cleaning information.
I feel like what you're saying is, and like this is something that I've seen within my own investment sphere and research space, is that, going back to the original premise of your question, is that has it been cost prohibitive initially? I would argue yes, it has for the general average business, and that's why you only see the likes of your Microsofts, your OpenAIs, and all the rest of those guys, your Googles, your Amazons, that have, Salesforce really as well, being at the forefront, that have really put in a lot of effort.
It's cost prohibitive in terms of doing.
But we're
profound
building,
change,
but that's
right?
the thing, we're building out the infrastructure, and like going back to the analogy there of the JD, it's almost like we've got to take it out of how we can put English together, and we almost got to write it in computer code and have everything in the computer language first, before we can actually sit there and go, okay, well, all the highways are connected. We've got them connected from city to city, node to node, all the rest of it. Now we're starting to see the likes of the Chinese guys coming through, like DeepSeek and whatnot, which are starting to go, okay, I see what you've done, I'm going to make it cheaper. So I actually think it's going to be like the electronics age of the late 90s, early 2000s, where we're going to see efficiency makes it more cost effective to produce, which means it's going to be cheaper for the consumer. Where I still think that it's going to be prohibitive is still going to be in the time to get it there.
Well, and
because every business starting from scratch is going to take time.
Yeah, and when you look back to what we were doing together, probably nearly 10 years ago now, when it was a lot of Infusionsoft, a lot of Zapier, a lot of Entreport, a lot of all of the UiPath and RPA.
Hard-coded rule sets.
Yeah, where there was fundamentals of actually automating processes. But I feel like the misconception is that everybody believes now, no matter what business they're in, that AI is now going to come in, and now it's not about automating a process. They just think it's going to do someone's job, right, from end to end, right, and that's going to cause a problem for the business, and it's too expensive, and
I
there's
think
no point.
That's going to be the difference between AI as we describe at the moment and general AI.
Yeah, correct. Yeah.
Care to elaborate?
I want to know everything about AGI.
I'll pass to Jason.
Oh my God! You should play for the Eagles the way you handball.
Hey Chris, I was just thinking, just with regards to what you're saying, I think you're in a perfect position right now because you talk about the commoditization of AI. DeepSeeks are coming out. Ultimately, these LLMs, if you look at them, they're getting close. Of course, OpenAI led the fall, but they're getting closer and closer in terms of the accuracy, the speed, the latency. Everything's getting closer, or at least more similar. So the reversion to the mean is getting closer. So what that means is that everyone has access to AI now. So when you say it's expensive, I would guarantee almost every employee in most businesses are using ChatGPT, which is making them more efficient, irrespective. The businesses are benefiting from people at least just interacting with AI. When you start putting AI into your core business processes, the underlying LLMs getting cheaper and cheaper,
Yeah.
by the day.
Yeah.
So what you're sitting with is ultimately like the stock exchange. If you find an edge, the market finds a way to normalize, right? So we're sitting in a good position now where we're still on the up, where there's money to be made in terms of investment in companies that are doing innovative things, but ultimately it's going to be a reversion to the mean, and AI is going to be a core part of our general day. If you don't have AI in a business,
Are you specifically referring to the LLM section of it? Because that, I think, is definitely, the race has been run and it's done. Like, these guys are
adoption's different.
They've got the market share.
Yeah.
To try and start an LLM from scratch and then go up against these big guys. I just think it's like these are the cloud operators. These are the guys that have the backing.
I think
you can't compete.
But LLM is a great conversation because when we talk about particularly things like advisory, and
What does LLM stand for?
Large language model.
Did you say that to the camera?
Large language model. Right.
Doing what?
Nothing wrong with me, mate. There's a couple of
Did you
screws
need me
left
to
up there.
moderate this?
Hey?
I've actually programmed him. Frank's in his other office, and I managed to guess his whole
holographic.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I'm not even here. I'm not here. Anyway, since you rudely interrupted, yes,
Which I
it's a large language model. Is it a large language?
No, not at all.
Well, for
It's-
your case, it's a medium language.
It's a medium.
And language of
average,
above
average size language model.
and language is a stretch.
Let's pick the right country.
Woo, excellent.
I love this, Craig.
Yeah, it's nice. Oh yeah, just
You
drink up, mate.
Chris did badly interrupt you. You were on a really good thing about that.
Yeah, no, you were.
I was so impressed you used
The thing
the acronym.
about
you
Chris
used
that I really dislike is he just brings such low energy every engagement, and if only he brought some intelligence with it, would be great. But
I'm the first to go. Yeah, it really comes in.
yeah, I know. I'm nearly tapped out of everything I got to say too. Don't worry. But no, with the LLMs, right? And we're talking about advisory. So you talk about the comparison of creation versus efficiency, right? Efficiency obviously can be put in place far more simply in businesses that have repetitive processes, which Daz has done a lot of work on for us and things like that. But to then create, or in our space, where we're talking about, and we've spoken about this before, in the accounting game where there's a lot of advisory that's relating to valuations, capital gains, all types of different situations where a lot of it requires the nuances of each individual business or the way that we do things or the way that we interpret things, which can only be learnt from the data that we've already created. So it's not in a good format. You can't really find an answer to all problems, particularly in accounting, right? You can find out what the ATO says about this type of transaction, but the nuances would only exist where we can really generate automated responses for things like...
You need to apply the appropriate knowledge set to those problems that you face.
But what
Otherwise it's pointless,
what I was leading to was for people to develop and have truly powerful AI in-house means that they've really got to develop their own LLM, right? To be able to then house all of the existing knowledge and develop a huge amount of valuable IP, right? That might be able to do better than someone else. If everyone leverages just the public available LLMs, does that just mean that no one actually gets the edge? Or is it too hard to actually build a database of our own where we can put our own AI on top of it to be able to generate, better answers, high quality answers, because it's a reflection of how we deliver.
But that's an interesting point because, of course, making AI contextual to your business data is something that's been, it's obviously a core part of AI. So if you just implement Microsoft Copilot and you train it up on all your data, that system, whilst it's an LLM in the background, meaning that it can speak and interact with you in natural language, it can be completely contextual to the information that you have. Does that mean that LLM and that response would be able to have the subjectivity and creativity that you have when looking at a customer's situation? Say, under this situation we could, your wife's doing this and you using a portion of your house, so the stuff that you guys as accountants bring to the table through experience is something that I would argue could be done to a certain degree with AI, but only a certain degree. So you're going to have your standout accounting practices that add a lot to the whole thing, but you will be able to automate a large portion of it where there's no subjectivity required.
But I think that's really where particularly, even if it is going to be something that disappears in the future because AI becomes able to assess data and be creative in its responses and accurate at the same time, we're a long way off. We're talking a long way down the road here.
Yep.
Right. So as far as accounting firms, and again, talking about threat for a second, was the threat of AI to all businesses, but in this particular conversation, accounting, right? You got to embrace it, right, to be able to improve the business. But then, I don't think that it should be embraced for the point of generating profit. I think it should be embraced for the point of reinvesting the efficiencies into utilising it better.
Yeah.
Right. I think that you need to move as quickly as possible with AI, and I think this is in any business, right? Not just accounting, but I think that probably 90% of businesses are going too slow right now. I think just the use of ChatGPT to verify your own questions is not enough. Right? If you really want a business that's going to last the next 20 years.
Yeah, ChatGPT is a novel tool for a lot of individuals to utilise in their spare time to generate some interesting responses. Some people use it more professionally, sure. I don't see it as something that's revolutionary just yet. I'm kind of coming back to you a little bit on how you were phrasing your question. I don't think you quite answered what I think you were getting to the crux of it. Like the main guys, like your Microsofts and OpenAI, all that group, your
It's only
DeepSeek.
one per podcast. That's going to be $12. No, sorry.
Jesus Christ, it's like jet stuff.
Yeah.
So it's got to be 20. Why are you throwing me off?
Sorry.
I had a really poignant point.
No, it looked like you were in the zone there too. You were fucking right there. Yeah.
I was
We'll
almost going to do the.
We'll call it
thing
square
there.
then.
Put
shall we?
trivia
No, I'm like, you're talking about you using the LLMs that are out there at the moment.
Yeah.
We're bringing information within a certain business, this business for argument's sake, that we're putting together, that we're leveraging off the LLMs for a data set. And you're sitting there going, are we repopulating the data set so that other businesses then can take the advantage of all the work that we've done?
Yeah.
And
Exactly.
I sit there and look at it and go, look, yes, there's some element of data swapping back and forth.
We can
But
get into
once
the
again-
privacy element of and everything. after,
Exactly. But I suspect what we'll do is we'll end up getting to a point where we're using the LLMs to train our own in-house systems. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but that's how I'm suspecting the future's going to play out, and especially when we start talking to general AI, like a proper intelligence, that each business could have, in theory, their own intelligences that are just trained off these large language models.
Yeah, no.
Yeah, I feel the same. I think it's going to be very specific to each industry and potentially each business use case.
Because you don't want something that is going to spit stuff out of you which is completely irrelevant.
Correct. It needs to be
Because that,
honed.
yeah.
Well, again, and back to the data aspect of it, but it needs to know what it needs to show you.
Yeah.
And it needs to be trained on what it's worked on and what's relevant to the cause, essentially.
But once again, this comes, I suppose, on another tangent, especially from an investing point of view. This comes down to the fact that businesses are going to require significant data storage.
Correct.
In order to house something to analyse all that data and be far more efficient than, say, having 10 staff versus the one that is well supported by a general AI.
And so,
I was just going to say that yeah, I think you're on the right track there, Chris. But there's two concepts over here. There's, we're talking about the concept of data, and then you're talking about training of an algorithm.
Okay, sure.
So your
Tell me
clearly your data within a business needs to be, it's sacred, something that obviously
Yeah,
needs to be protected. So as much as you train your information, your AI on your data in Alderton, Bhudia, and we transpose that to another business, clearly the actual data isn't the thing that you're transposing. You're transposing the knowledge of how to run workflows. And to that end, there's a lot of work being done. So if we look at, there's new protocols. Internet. You guys want HTTP. It's a protocol, right? That's the protocol that the internet runs on. You know, we
What?
yeah, it's 4 letters. It's 4 letters. I don't expect you to remember the 4
Mate,
letters.
I got it.
Chris only knows A, B, and C. That's it.
You know,
what?
yeah, it's 26 letters, right?
I'm working up to
Yeah,
it.
right, you're 30.
All I know is ROI. That's the 3 I remember.
But there's new protocols being developed now, and it's early days. You know about MCP, right?
Yeah.
So there's new protocols being developed.
Sorry, I'll just MCP.
Yeah, M.
Yeah, do you want just for Chris's benefit, what does that mean?
I was going to think of My Little Pony, but it's My Crappy Pony.
No, model context protocol. So it doesn't really make the point. What did you say, my
Somebody's
crappy
enjoying
pony?
this.
Did you actually say my crappy pony?
You've already shit on two companies at this podcast. We're going to be banned from all airplanes,
Mate,
right? And My Little Pony hates me.
this is hitting me lovely.
We're only on the first one. We're on about the
Smoking
seventh.
notes,
Look at that.
I'm an athlete under all this.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, under all of this, under that layer, extra layer, it's over the top.
Absolutely.
Just a fat layer.
Yeah, so the point is, before you...
Sorry.
There's protocols being developed around the AI space that allows you to share the AI sort of knowledge without necessarily sharing. So
The knowledge, the know-how, not the data.
Yeah, so know on how to do something. And of course, we've had agentic workflows for a while, right? So AI agents, AI. So ChatGPT is an agent, right? You interact with it, you ask it a question, you might give it some context, you might upload a PDF. Otherwise, it's a GPT generative pre-trained transformer.
Is that what it means?
What do you mean? Everyone knows that.
How did you not know that?
My wife still gets it back to front. GTP.
Yeah, no,
No, sorry, honey.
So ChatGPT is an agent. You interact with it, you give some context, and it gets an answer. That's cool. But what we did a little while ago, this is a bit in the past, is we took that one level up and we said, right, let's take that concept, but make multiple agents. So take the ChatGPT, but make it highly contextual. So make it an SME, a subject matter expert in a particular field.
Just slow that down.
Sorry,
Stop the acronym.
No, the acronym. Say the acronym.
You don't understand Afrikaans?
SME, subject matter expert, right?
Subject matter expert.
So if you're
So subject is like kind of the thing, like a particular thing that you're talking about, right? Like the subject of this podcast
expert,
is AI.
Expert is someone who knows.
Yeah, you painted it on that.
So you can take a ChatGPT and make it highly expert in something. Let's say it's an accountant, or let's say it's a marketing, let's say it's a social media content generator. You can take that expert and really train it up to be really good at that. You know, you're the master social media generator expert for Facebook, for this particular company. You know, you can make it really contextual. Then you can get a lot of these things. So that one's an account, that's on the SME, that one generates, this one reviews. So essentially, creating an agent for each type of person you need in your organization. Employee. Right? So you look at all the employees you need over here. You create
Which is
an
why
agent.
you need to start with the JD.
Well, yeah, exactly. Well done. You were listening. Holy moly.
I was.
Jeez, that's surprising. And
why does it feel like I'm bringing the IQ level down?
Yeah, I know. You're interrupting some really profound shit.
No,
here.
it's profound.
I only have one breath, and I have to finish all this before it finishes. Anyway, so if you take each expert agent, and you then have an agent above that takes the query that you do to ChatGPT and says, hey, could you please create me a social media post about our latest newsletter, right? Or about our latest annual report. So then that supervisory agent can then knows all the agents underneath it and says, right, we need to have a content generator. We need to have somebody do some research. We need to have somebody to review it. We need to have somebody. So it then allocates that work to individual AI agents and ultimately returns a response. So you still interact with one agent, but it's got a team of agents. It's like
my mind is being blown away.
But let me ask a question in this, right? So, fine. If you were to assume that all of these SMEs or subject matter experts for each of those sections would be a different employee within an organization, right? Different part of the workflow chain, right? At pretty much every one of those elements in businesses like ours requires some human element to it, right? So if you're talking about sending something out, you mentioned one of them is review, right? How can you allocate a review to AI when it doesn't have the nuanced knowledge of that would be a review from us? Like, to what extent are you talking about?
Initially, you don't have to. So what we've got in AI is a thing called HR, human in the loop.
Yeah.
So what we would do is you let the AI...
You said HR.
HIL. Mate, you need to learn it.
Okay.
I mean, what's wrong with you? and you would... so
For everyone out there who's as dumb as me.
So in AI we've got a process called human in the loop, right? So it's like where the AI agent does everything it can and everything's run against confidence factors, right? So it says, I'm pretty confident, you can set those factors, I'm 83% confident that I've got this right. You can say, right, if you're 70% confident, pass off to a human, right? Or you may just say in all cases, under a certain circumstance, pass off to a human. We do this in our investor relations business, where we never send something out that's purely AI generated. Always pass off to a human. Just check it, make a few changes. We pass that back to retrain and send it out. But this human in the loop process allows you in these complex workflows to have the AI agent do 93% of the work. Pass it off to a human. Human says, cool, happy. Either make some minor changes and then it carries on through that process. So we do, there's a way to mitigate.
So then, what is the timeline we're talking about here? So if you're talking about getting a process done, right, where let's talk about, again, we'll loop to accounting for a second again, because obviously that's where we are, but you want to get something done that requires human in the loop, right, but it also requires to sound like it come or be developed as if it's come from this business because of the way we deliver and all that sort of stuff. How long does it take for either one or these, different agents, or how long does it take for them to learn and be able to deliver something?
Are we benchmarking Darren at the moment?
Hey?
Kind of sounds like we are.
Yeah.
I'm keen to see.
Yeah.
Am I couch casting you?
Wow.
I thought you were couch casting me before.
We're benchmarking Darren.
Benchmarking.
When he,
You've had a couple Craig and Ross too.
Benchmarking. You never. That S was silent. You never heard the S. I specifically
feel pretty dumb now, don't you?
I specifically made that S silent. If we're benchmarking Daz 30, 40 years, maybe. 50 years, maybe. It's a long time.
Yeah, so including annual pay rises.
Bit of interest on the side.
No, of course, it's a how long's a piece of string. I mean, it depends on the process. I'll give you a bit of an anecdote in terms of experience.
But the reason I ask that, just to preface what you're going to say, is the reason I say that is because I imagine that if it's only working off our LLM, right, that's going to learn super quick because it's every bit of information it's gathering is only us, right? It's how we do business. It's how we present, how we it could be just from the way we format stuff to the way that we actually deliver a piece of advice to the actual advice itself. Right. But if you're building it to learn based off the world or the LLMs that exist publicly, right, then that surely slows down the ability for you to have a more effective AI.
Oh shit!
You mean you're trying to pigeonhole the AI?
Yeah. Because why give it access to other data if it just learns off yours, it should learn faster?
I think once again it comes down to what your intention is. Like if you want something to be a yes and no machine, you can make that very simple. Yes, no, yes, no, yes, no, yes, no. Well, that's basically a computer. If you want it to be something which is dynamic and can think outside the box.
Exactly. Advisory is creative.
But
right, so
this
leveraging
is my point.
the creativity in here versus
But once again, you need as many examples as possible. I mean, I suppose, let's just zoom out a little bit from the accounting industry and go into self-driving automation and self-driving Teslas and all the rest of that are trying to achieve that. And obviously there's the various levels of achievement. I won't go into that. But it's like, you think of how many processes we go through in a thought process just to turn a corner in something, and look at the environment and how to assess whether it's safe to turn that car into that
Yeah.
corner. And then you can also then go further back again and go, what technology should we be using to assess that? Now, obviously, Tesla's got one that they are tried and true on, and other companies are going another way with that, and they all have pros and cons and benefits and stuff like that. But there is just substantial amount of data that is needed to train.
I agree.
In order to be able to be flexible enough to assess every situation.
I agree, but I think where I'm getting at, and here's an example, right? So there's a particularly in firms like ours, right, where we claim to be a high quality, but because we are, but also because
you claim high quality.
We claim, but we are, right? But it's also it's a very personal relationship with every client, right? It's not templated. It's not, it's automatic emails that goes to everybody all the time. It's nothing like that. So if we were to train an AI to behave like us, right, it would need to speak the way that our team is trained by our policies and procedures and all that sort of stuff.
But that's when I suppose you come down to the agentic AI, where you can start training a version of it or a smaller subset of it to be
exactly
speak in the voice or speak in the style of Frank Alderton and
Exactly, but where I'm getting to is all of the 25 people in here are
individuals.
Writing emails, for example, based on our email policy, right? How they're formatted, how they work, how they speak to clients is all our design, right? It's not, there is individual for each person, and depending on the relationship with the client or if they're internal or external. But you think about how much data we already have just in that, right? If we had something that was reading all of our emails to understand us, right, then we would be able to have better.
There'd be a lot of people going through divorce courts.
But it is interesting, right?
But do you get my point? I know Chris doesn't get it, but do you understand?
So easy to get.
Do you understand what I'm saying?
Point ever.
Let's bring the room back up.
Simplest point ever.
It's obviously too deep for Chris.
Come on, I'm down here.
I like it.
You hate me right now.
No. It's always good to have a fall guy in every conversation.
Don't send this to my wife.
So I was just listening to you then, and there's a reason.
Thank you.
I've been cut off apparently, so I'm just going to finish my glass.
There's a reason why accounting has been labelled as one of the industries, one of the sort of industries that are benchmark for disruption, the biggest sort of disruption. Close to the biggest disruption by AI, and because, and that's because irrespective of your tonality or your professionalism or anything else that separates you from your competitors, ultimately the industry is governed by a set of rules. You ultimately have to comply with certain sets of rules, and those things are immutable.
Just in case we get sponsored.
Wow.
We're
having. Can we get a second camera for these guys? Please. It's unbelievable. Pay attention.
I'm trying to get sponsored.
Pay attention.
I like this.
Yeah. So your industry is governed by a set of rules, and so it's a governed, regulated industry, and therefore it makes it quite easy for AI to say, there's something going out, does it or does it not comply? Yes or no, outside of everything else, and then you start talking nuances or what separates you in terms of the personal experiences. And yes, so you can get and you can have AI. The first port of call is to understand that higher level governance and legislative compliance requirements. And then you start training it up on the way that you interact with people, which is good and bad. If you were to train an AI on everything that your staff is saying, what if you have a bad staff member and actually the AI gets trained bad? I know you wouldn't, but I mean, what if Chris did?
I'm just thinking that if you had some famous rapper come into your business, I mean, every second word would be F, and the emails would be a little.
You can swear here if you want. You don't have to say the F word.
I'm above that.
You're not. You're definitely not.
What rapper says Yef?
Isn't
That was good. That wasn't bad.
My abbreviation is one letter.
That's good.
I
don't deal with
was
three
it
letters.
Oh, you haven't got the.
I've only got one.
We all started at one, mate. That's fine.
Mate, you're making me feel self-conscious.
Okay then. So let's pivot a little bit then. So if I'm a business now that hasn't done fuck all in terms of AI automation or anything like that, right? What should they do before they scan your QR code and get you in to fix the business. Daz, what you've done a world of
Crag
things
and
on
more.
our data.
For a really smoky flavour.
All you need to do is get 2 of your friends to sell these.
And 2 of their friends, and 2 of their friends, and 2 of
This
their
is
friends.
not a pyramid
Before you
scheme.
know it.
Not a pyramid.
No,
Can we have that in writing?
Somebody write to Greg
It's
Moore
called
and tell-
multi-level marketing. It's not called a pyramid scheme.
Multi-level
Marketing.
MLM. Oh,
MLM.
there you go. I'm getting there, I'm getting there.
Almost LLM.
I see MLM. It's called.
I'm lost.
Des, over to you.
I do think it's pretty vital to get everything in order, and like we discussed previously, to take a step back and look at the bigger picture, because it always will come down to data, and to structure that and start putting procedures and policies in place to actually train people in the correct way to use tools before you start applying governance or applicability or usage or knowledge growth or anything like that. To, if you want to go your internal LLM, you need to put the structure in place as a firm or as a business, and then start moving towards it.
And so having policies and procedures that are in place and not going to change, or, I mean, we always have to improve our businesses all the time, right? We're always getting better and better and
there's
better,
a
right?
dynamism to
Right,
business.
yeah, absolutely. But, well, very nice word there, Chris. Well done. You've lifted yourself back out of the depths of hell.
Did you say dynamicism, which is a word, or datacism, which isn't a word? Which one did you say?
So, Craig Moore.
He said Cragganmore.
You
Smoky
are
flavors.
not allowed to
Let's face
laugh.
it.
There's laughing happening
You're
on the
not
camera.
allowed
The
to
camera
laugh.
is
This is our
laughing.
I
I'm
said
going to film
dynamism.
for 2 hours. It's going to get real
Dynamism.
bad.
Okay, so that isn't a word, but
That is a
word.
word.
Kind of
Dynamism.
dynamism. Yeah.
Say it enough times and you'll question yourself.
Actually, you may be right. I've got a dynamo in my car. So
Yeah,
it
just
should be right.
chat GPT it.
Oh, GTP it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Not chat GTP it.
Now, quick, like and subscribe. Go.
So I've got a very practical. I've got an answer to your question that is very sort of cross applicable to every type of business, right? We're not talking, and this is serious. Despite Chris's face.
No, sorry, I was drinking.
That's just what he looks like. Nothing you can do about it.
The wind changed.
So what I would say is you got to understand as a business owner that irrespective of the type of business, irrespective of whether it's a government organization, no matter what, all your employees are probably using ChatGPT, right? And more often than not, they're using their own accounts of ChatGPT. So the very first thing for companies to do is understand that and create an enterprise version of OpenAI's ChatGPT and distribute that as part of their onboarding and allow employees to use that. The reason for this,
Sorry, can I
this is really important.
Okay, sorry.
This is really
I'll
important.
jump
I'm really passionate.
No,
about this.
go for it.
My wife will. No, the reason is because people are using ChatGPT to generate some pretty cool content, and that is IP that's in your organization that's sitting in somebody else's personal ChatGPT. So if you just create an enterprise GPT, allow people to use it, you're retaining IP in the organization. If they leave, that IP still remains in your enterprise GPT.
Sorry, dumb this down for me.
Yeah.
Like when you say enterprise it, are you creating your own chat GPT by leveraging the LLM?
No.
Or are you just going, okay, we're going to log into a company-wide email?
No, even simpler than that. So OpenAI, ChatGPT allows you to create an account, right? So anytime you want to, if you would have created your own account, you can create an account as a business.
Yes.
So if you create an account as a business, you can add employees to that, and you then allow them to use that as part of their onboarding process. So they onboard, they get their Microsoft Office license, they get their ChatGPT license, and they use that. So allow them to use it.
OpenAI is still obviously able to access that information and improve their systems. Correct?
Not necessarily. Enterprise AI, OpenAI doesn't. Any information that you put into OpenAI's Enterprise AI is not
because
used
you're paying
to train.
for it.
Yeah, it's not used to train their systems. So that
And it's kept
so
internally.
100%. So this is really important. So
Really?
So they ring
Is
fence
this
it.
confirmed?
100%. Yeah, everyone can check this out. go onto ChatGPT, onto OpenAI's website and look at their enterprise offerings. And what they do is they ring fence your data, so none of your data will be used to train the model, and it'll be information held within the organization. It's super important.
Trying to create value.
What it is what Microsoft has done with Azure OpenAI, which is a derivative of normal OpenAI, right? But Azure OpenAI is really, really cool because what it does is it allows for that whole onshoring, offshoring thing. OpenAI itself is America-based, so your information could potentially be leaving Australian shores, where Azure OpenAI is the same thing, a little bit behind, but it allows for that data sovereignty. So you can actually take out an Azure OpenAI account and allow all your employees to still use the ChatGPT experience, but it is held onshore. So they type in Joe Bloggs' $230,000 payout to his missus. Doesn't go over to the States. Sovereignty is important. So it remains onshore, and importantly, it remains within your organization's information. So if they leave, if Daz was an accountant and were to leave, that information still remains within the OpenAI instance onshore. Really important. It's super easy to do. Take out an enterprise version of ChatGPT or take out OpenAI.
So when you look at that,
I was going to say, does this mean we don't have to redact any information when we're
but it
putting
also
into
means you don't have to recreate and start doing the wheel again, in a sense, within your own business.
Yeah.
Because hey, you can silo your data
but it's still not your data. It's their data still. You're never going to have access to it.
because you're paying for that.
Yeah, I know, but you're never going to be able to say to them, "Well, give me that data."
How long have we got? How many days do we have over here? Because
we've
when
got
we start talking
of a very, very smooth Kraganmore. Like and subscribe.
When we start talking, like and subscribe. When we start talking data, then we get into a whole new world, right? So data, it's one thing uploading a PDF.
Is it data or data?
Well, it's data. Only real low intellect people.
That's why we brought Chris in here, just to bring us up a peg.
I'd like to say I'm here for comedic relief.
You started differently. It slipped away from you real fast.
If only you were
I exhausted my material.
Sorry, go on, Joe. Guys, shut up.
So when you start talking data, so did I just?
I got you thinking about it.
Oh my god! You actually got into my head. When you start talking that stuff, the ones and zeros.
That's something based.
You got the information that you upload. You drag a PDF and you say summarize this in the style of Shakespeare, whatever the case might be, which you guys do all the time, because I know that's how you interact with your clients. Or you have your enterprise, your company data, which typically gets uploaded to a vector database. So when you import it into a large data store, you're importing this information into a vector data. So you have to vectorize this information in order to do similarity searching, which Chris would know all about it. Yeah,
I do.
And so it's a database.
I only know vectors from Year 12 specialist maths.
So it's a database for AI information, right? As soon as you start ingesting information into an AI database that you can access, that's your information. OpenAI has zero interaction with that. OpenAI has nothing. If you're under an enterprise ring fence, OpenAI has nothing to do with all your PDFs that you upload. And even if you would have a baseline ChatGPT system and you upload it, you are starting to get a little bit tricky there because A, information is going offshore, but B, that information could be used to train. But ultimately, OpenAI is training on internet-based information.
Well, once again, you got to think back to like social media, the advent of social media. The fact that it was free means that you are the commodity.
Of course.
And a lot of people have always mentioned that in multiple different ways. They're scraping and leveraging your information, your searches, your data, in order to bolster them.
Yeah.
As soon as you start paying for it, the question is, well, what are you actually paying for?
Yeah.
I think what the hardest thing with going from, I suppose, let's really step back here a little bit, and I suppose I'm going to put my investor hat on really hard on this one. Going back 30, 40, 50 years, a lot of economies were based on manufacturing. The goods that you can provide or the services that you can provide. a lot of services were more like in the physical realm of nature. So, you go back to accounting back in those days. It was you come in, you see your accountant, they sit down, they go through all the papers that you have, tick, 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 boom, 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 put it into these sheets, and then send it off. We've moved into an era of the software era, and I think a lot of people don't actually understand the IP element of it and what we are actually paying or not paying for. And I suppose when we look at the intellectual property of something like an AI, we're actually looking at the data, and we've always said, okay, data's gold, data's king, but I don't think too many people actually connect the dots and going, what does this actually mean?
Mm.
And it's like every single interaction has a value. Every single interaction builds upon, what you can create, and especially with an AI, it builds upon the intelligence of that AI.
But does then the IP not sit within the code that's written to interpret the data?
Not necessarily. Once again, it's all about the negotiation. Now, countries like America have been very, very quick to understand that the new oil is data. The new gold is data. That's where the values are, because once you have that information, there's so many ways that you can turn it, manipulate it, use it to create productivity or efficiency, or even being malicious in its intention.
Yeah. Mm.
And that's where I think a lot of other countries have not kept up with that understanding of what it means and freely given away this gold's oil without realizing its future intrinsic value. And it is hard. It's hard to, I suppose, getting down to being an accountant, I'm an ex-accountant myself, it's always easy to understand what depreciation means. Okay, I've got a physical asset, I've got a building, I've got a piece of machinery, it's deteriorating over time, I've got to account for that deterioration. But when we start talking about impairment or goodwill or amortization, it starts becoming a bit in the ether. It's not tangible. What does that actually mean? Who's creating that?
Data's code has dropped in value.
Oh, definitely.
It's only many lines.
I mean,
but
only because of the data that I've provided here right now.
Yeah.
Sorry, Dad, I apologise profusely.
You don't need to.
But it is something where I look at it and go, there are a lot of people that just don't understand what they're giving away at the moment. Social media has been a very, very big one where people are starting to wake up to the fact that, okay, this has been fun, but what have I actually given up in the process? It would have been better to pay for this service and protect my data, or given it away for free, which I effectively go, we'll use your service for free, here's my data. And I suppose this is where the whole utilising someone else's work, like your OpenAIs, which we're using for this conversation, to say, is it worth paying for it or not paying for it? What are you getting for when you don't pay for it? Which I know, correct me if I'm wrong, using the old model of the system versus the paid one where you're using the next updated model. Is that correct?
But now you're talking about where we see value, right? When you say, what are we paying for? It's like, and the social media example is a good one. It's like, so the value of that data to Facebook itself or to any other social media platform itself holds something.
Yeah.
Whether it's the demographics or the analysis of the behaviour or to understand. Yeah, exactly. But for you, it doesn't mean anything. Or Chris checked in here on a Tuesday, right? And you did it on Facebook. You've given that away for free.
I'd argue against you on that one, because I suppose it's when you talk about value, I think we
Make
all
sure you give it a pitch.
Sorry. Craig Moore, follow his link.
I think when we talk about social media, we look at people utilising social media and going, this doesn't mean anything. I argue differently. It doesn't mean something financial, but it means something social.
Yeah,
for sure.
Like for so many people, they have tied themselves so heavily to the social media phenomenon
But
that their online persona is unable to be extricated from their real world persona.
But now we're talking about what damage has been done by social media and technology to the population as a whole.
That's the question where you look. We can get into that.
That's a different podcast.
That's a different.
Right?
That's a different
podcast altogether.
But when we talk about going back to value, we go back. If everyone collectively realised that their own data was valuable to these companies, we would have a very different conversation. But
it all comes down
a lot of people don't think that way.
Because it all comes down to value, right? So for me, I look at all the businesses we work with, if we were to enter information into ChatGPT, yes, it may be going up, and at the metadata level, they interacting, they consolidating everything, and they working out trends, global trends, and who's doing what, and they monetize that, and they figure out a way to become a multi-trillion-dollar business. That's one thing. Ultimately, my interaction with ChatGPT, am I getting value from that as a business?
Yeah.
Right? So you say, okay, yeah, there's a cost to doing this. There's a cost to jumping on Facebook and saying anything. You look at Instagram thing, and they know how long you look at it for, and therefore, there's all this bigger data play. Ultimately, am I getting value out of it? And I think from a business perspective, if we talk about companies utilizing it, particularly small companies, and we list, one of our businesses, which I can plug in a second, interacts with...
we have not invested in Great. We would like to.
We deal specifically with listed businesses, which is a different sort of kettle of fish, but talking small businesses, we're not interested, we don't care if I type into...
small?
Tiny.
So my medium language model is a bit too big for him.
I'm
Mine is a language model.
I'm looking at my QLM, my quantum language model, and So if we talk about the small to medium to even big businesses that are unlisted, all you're looking at doing, and we're talking practically, you just want to get some efficiencies that have any sort of leverage, and it's all about that's what AI is. It's leverage. It's just a way to make more or less. And what we're seeing across the board now is, yes, there are those bigger aspects of play. And I understand why you've come from it, because you got your investor hat on.
I'm big picture. I'm big picture, and then I go down to the points, and that's where I look to invest. And that's fine. I know my bias is that way inclined.
Yeah.
You're coming from a very different perspective. I get it,
and I've got no doubt that down the line we're going to see the impact of people interacting with these LLMs to make their businesses better is going to benefit the larger companies.
Yeah, you're both talking about value, or efficiency and value at the same thing, right? So let's just talk about that small to medium enterprise, the SME market of businesses, right? Which we sit in, and as does 98% of the businesses in Australia, or whatever the statistics are, right? They all
I think it's
have
7.8.
Well, I'm me excuse.
You're excuse.
I might have made that up.
You definitely. But every business is trying to achieve one thing, right? Let me change that a little bit. Every business is trying to achieve one thing if they have any kind of level of ambition or something like that, because in that 98% covers a lot of sole traders and other sort of smaller businesses that aren't really trying to grow or do anything. But any business that's trying to grow is trying to create value, right? And they're trying to create value so that ultimately they can sell it later, or bring in an investor later, or do something whereby the value of the business has improved, right? And so, using what you're saying, we should all be embracing it, because increased efficiency should translate to increased profits, which should translate to increased value, right? So that's one pathway to an investor saying, well, I can see what they've adopted, I can see what they've done to make this business better over the course of the last months or years, right? Which to me makes it seem more valuable, right? That's one side to this building of value in a business, right? But how much is a business now deteriorating for you in your investor hat, right, if they've done nothing? So now you've got to look at an accounting firm or a hospitality business or a retail store, and let's say for argument's sake it's worth $1 million, right? Because it's got a 2 times multiple, because that's the industry standard for that valuation for that style of business. So it does $500,000 profit. You've got 2 of them in front of you, one of them has technology and one of them has none, does it increase the value of the one with technology or decrease the value of one without now?
Once again, I'm going to preface the answer to this as being it's specific. You cannot just make a blanket statement without quantifying the fact, or qualifying the fact that you've got to do your due diligence on these businesses. My gut feel at the moment is if implemented properly, and there is obviously material productivity and efficiency gains.
But there is some better than none, or does it need to be properly? Because again, some businesses could have implemented small amounts seeking this better efficiency or seeking a better way to do business, but they may not have done it properly yet.
Any small and medium enterprise business, SME.
No, that's different.
You didn't.
It's a different.
No
different
B.
SME.
There's no B in there.
No, it's
You
different.
said small to medium business.
Yeah, no.
Stop it, confusing me. I had a point. Either way, no, seriously, getting back to it. I still think it's like, because I'm a long-term, I hate to use the word value investor because I'm not quite in that camp, but I'm closer to that camp than not. It's about looking at the fundamentals, piecing it together and going, okay, well, you've spent X on this program. What have you seen in return for it? So I need to do the due diligence of numbers. So I'm not going to put a blanket statement out there and say, just because you spent some money means it's going to work for you. However, it's been proven enough times that implementing this correctly, let's call it correctly, is going to have efficiencies purely on the human resources level.
And then, so do you look at it then? So again, so now you're looking at it purely from the technology or from the point that the director or directors have made a good decision to at least try?
No, I'd never do it from the least try, because once again, at least try implies some level of incompetency.
Well, but it's not incompetency, because trying means you're actively looking to progress into what modern business should be.
But once again, I don't invest in businesses purely because someone's come with a ribbon in the race that says I tried.
Yeah.
I invest in businesses that are proven successes in achieving outcomes.
Okay.
But
those businesses, these guys have come up with novel ways of
But
improving their space. They disrupt what they do in order to achieve something different.
But I would say, Chris, you're a fundamental investor. No, AI is not going to turn a shit business into a good business, right? AI is not going to turn a guy that's doing a crap business model into a success. 100%. So what we're talking about here is efficiencies within a successful business realm. So you're gonna look at all the AI's only been around for 2 years. You've been around for 3. I mean,
can you bring that my fourth birthday?
So AI's only been around for AI isn't going to turn a crappy business model into a good business.
I was really hoping.
So I would say, and this is where we're at. We're talking competitive advantage. That's what we're talking about.
Agreed.
So in a successful organisation, you've got to compete. You guys have got
competitive
advantage.
advantage.
I'm hedging the way I'm answering the question. I agree with you wholeheartedly. 99.9% of businesses that go through this process are going to see the benefits, because any small business, small or medium-sized business, or enterprise, thank you, is going to make sure that anything they do is going to yield results. If it doesn't yield results, they're not going to continue to, because they don't have the cash flows, they don't have the balance sheets to continue on a path of destruction indefinitely.
100%, yeah.
Some of the biggest organisations can do that.
So what I was leading to was, for our plethora of viewers, right, is that
The two.
Mum, Dad. Is that everybody that is in business should be starting. If they have an ambition to stay in business for the next 10 years, and this is not just professional services.
Yeah.
This is not, if part of your growth plan, right, at some point is to bring in investment from somebody, right? Even if it's from a bank, right? Or from, you need to be showing the progression of the business. So part of the key part of the progression in now moving forward is that you are trying to adopt technology to the
let
best
me
of your
answer it
ability,
in
right?
a different way, because I feel
You can
like...
answer it by saying, yes, Frank, you are
No,
correct.
no, I think you're right. I think you're 100% right. And let me answer it in a different way that will vindicate your line of questioning. Is that, I think this landscape, the investment landscape, is going to become tougher and harder in this early stages of adoption. Because there's going to be businesses that will stick their head in the sand and be left behind.
Yeah.
And they are going to be the ones that will not get the look in from the investor community. They will not get the look in from the, the loaning sector. Obviously your banks, but your secondary tiers as well. They're going to be your private equity spaces. They're going to be tougher to try and win over, unless you have something inbuilt which proves that you've got an edge. And we're talking in this early stages about edges, because eventually we're all going to catch up. The businesses that don't want to modernize are going to fall away. They're going to be replaced. They'll go the way of the dodo. And then there'll be those that will be left behind that will all be at some various stages of this adoption.
Okay, so let's pivot away from Olga. Do you want to say
I just want to say that the edge is no longer that I'm using AI. Everybody's using AI. So what we find in a lot of the businesses we're working with, that the edge has to be value. Has to be increased productivity. Has to be all the rest. Whether if AI enables that for you, cool. AI's turned to being an internal thing rather than anything publicized. As soon as you say, I'm using AI, whatever, it's assumed that now AI, and whether or not it is, but AI is utilized internally to improve productivity, therefore providing value to
Is that what you said? I mean, look, I know you... Okay, you're going to have a bias on this purely because of the clients that you deal with.
Yeah.
I'm not questioning that you're wrong, but I suppose I'm looking at this from a perspective of I don't think that every business is looking at this the same way.
I couldn't agree more.
And I think there's a lot of businesses, and let's go back to Frank and say, in this situation, I think there's a lot of accounting businesses that are, in a sense, long in the tooth, that have not taken any steps towards any version of AI other than letting their staff use ChatGPT for free.
Yeah.
And to say that they're part of the AI revolution, I think is complete twaddle.
Yeah.
That's using the Queen's English. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
I could use something.
It's the biggest word you've
I
used
agree
today.
with you. The accounting industry is such a perfectly,
TW.
that's what.
I don't know where to go from there.
That's it. Really, that's it.
TW Oddle.
But I mean, it's interesting you say that, because universities are starting to allow usage of AI and ChatGPT in some of the courses. So I've heard recently that for occupational therapy courses, one of the universities here, allowed.
Yeah.
Say, for example, human resources degree or business degree, not allowed. So they need to draw the line in what they're allowing, what they're not allowing, and how they're going to start transitioning this into everything, everyday life.
But university acceptance of this stuff is a litmus test of the rest of the
But
all businesses, every single, doesn't matter what freaking business you're in,
And
they're
they
using
use it- they use it to
ChatGPT. You
apply
can
to
be
that,
in
yeah.
the freaking MI6 and your employees are using ChatGPT. If you don't understand that as a CTO,
Can we
you're
bring this back to
fucking-
Australia instead
Well, no,
of
yeah.
the UK?
Yeah,
But this is
sorry,
exactly
I
what
thought I just raised
the
it.
wrong
I
Queen's
thought
English.
you were supposed to be James Bond. Oh, no,
Isn't
sorry.
it? No, this is James Bond after 42 Kragan Wars. But this is exactly
Hello, money, money.
This is Jasmine. This is Jasmine Bond. I get it.
I'm being very fluid.
How was the operation?
But this is exactly what I was getting into, right? Before you rudely took over, is that the embracing of it, whether it's university or businesses, right? We all know it's happening. So embracing it now becomes important, because it's like, either you're going to shift to an enterprise version because you want to see how it's being embraced and be able to utilize that to benefit the business moving forward, right? Or B, you just let it go and know it's happening and kind of just, put your head in the sand and do nothing about it. But if you're embracing it, I think what we need to think about is not from the investor's point of view or our point of view, right? Let's talk about for a second the job theft, right? Or the loss of jobs for people that believe that they're going to lose their jobs because of AI. Now, we've talked about already today about trying to replace a job role and an entire job.
Yeah, the world's flat.
I was literally going there.
You finished?
Sorry.
That's my fault. Cracking more.
Cracking more. Like and subscribe.
Hey,
The bottle's not very big.
that was my line.
Sorry, Chris. Go, quick, you go. Yeah.
Oh, let's take a break from our sponsors.
But yes, I think it's a really important conversation because I think we don't call them the haters, but the naysayers or the people that have not started embracing it because of probably they're nervous about data protection or they're nervous about something like that, right? Or are looking to throw shade on everyone that's embracing it because it's, people are going to lose their job.
Can I just say, I have been one of the biggest naysayers on social media, and I think that might have come out before, but I've never had a social media presence, and I still don't.
You do now.
No, I've been on social media, but I don't have my own presence. I don't have my own physical account. I know. Hi, Mum. Which is really difficult and awkward because that's beyond the grave. But either way.
No social media presence. You've got nothing. I thought I saw you on BigDong.com. Not BigDong.
No, OnlyFans is not social media.
No, sorry. Yeah, you were saying Big Dong. Oh, sorry, that was your other profile.
That's my profile. Yeah, Big Dong, Big Dong 101. 19 at Hotmail. Anyway, so no, it is understanding the value element, like knowing that something is just free does make me question, and knowing something you have to pay for then makes me go, okay, well, what am I paying for? It's being that natural skeptic, which once again, putting my investor cap on, which is what I do, is that I'm naturally skeptical of a lot of things. But going back to, should you be skeptical to the point where you don't do anything, where there's decision paralysis, where you just stick your head in the sand going, oh, this is all too hard? Yeah, I think in this situation, this is dangerous. As opposed to something like social media where, yeah, there could be a benefit to businesses. There's a marketing element to social media, which I get with businesses. I do get, but on a personal scale, that's up to each individual what they want to do.
But here's what I think, when it comes back to the AI job loss or job theft sort of thing, is that this idea that a business injects automation, AI, technology, right, and then that happens tomorrow, and then the day after, 15% of our staff are gone, right, it's just not fucking real, right? That's not what happens, right? And you think about what we've done over the last 12 months, Dazza, and you think about what you've been doing for many, many years now, whether it was AI or just automation in general, it's that we all have the time, right, when we say, okay, we're going to move our business forward in a particular direction using technology and AI and automation, where what we do will make a profound effect on the business over time, right? During that time, you're able to then say, what is the outcome that we're getting from this? What are the numbers what are the efficiencies we're getting? And there's no mass firings and layoffs and things like that. You generally, if you are a business, particularly one that's trying to grow and trying to move, where all it does is change the way you move, right, over the course of a period of time. Right?
Sorry. Can I propose a conspiracy theory?
Hey, you sure can. The Earth is round.
Well, yeah.
He was shot by one bullet. He was shot by one bullet, not three. What the hell?
No. We are going to go into an era and a generation where our populations are going to go backwards.
I believe that's true. Birth rate suggests that's
once again, I'm putting that out there because
there's
some people are claiming that's a conspiracy. I do look at some of the projections and the numbers, and I've seen with my own eyes that that's likely.
You've been to India.
No, it's more.
How dare
It's
you?
not. It's not about where
He's
I
already his eyes on a screen.
You're a voyeur.
You are shocking.
You should not be looking into those webcams.
Yeah, they look bad.
I looked into yours and it was terrible. Your OnlyFans.
You might pay.
Subscriber.
You're
It's alright when you charge $2,000 a month, it's fine.
Dude, you're keeping me alive.
Look, there's this great analogy from the turn of the 19th century coming into the 20th century. The analogy has always been New York City, horse and cart. New York City's getting swamped with horse manure, and people are going, it's the end of the world, we're going to be inundated with shit. And people are, all they can see is the negatives. The earth, we're doomed.
Yeah.
Lo and behold, out comes the automobile, and people go, I see the future, I see where this is going. Horses are phased out, no more horse manure in the streets, yada yada yada. And I look at what we're trying to do here and where we're going with AI, and then we start talking about what are our kids going to do in the future? Where's the jobs going to come from? What are they going to be doing? Are they just going to be lolling around on a universal basic income? UBI. And no, I'm coming at you. I'm coming at you. I'm coming at you. But it's one of those things that you sit there and look at those things, and I sit there and go, we look at population growth.
Yes, I'm listening.
Thank you.
Population growth.
We're looking at population and then I sit there and go, but this is where AI will augment that decline. And I'll actually be, in a sense, the beneficiary. And we will get to a point where, from a taxation perspective, I sit there and look at it and go, you can tax the individual worker, because let's say we've got an aging population, and our population is going to continue to age, much like China, going to continue to age, and they're going to be in the I'm old, I can't work, and I need to be supported phase. Not everyone's going to be able to self-fund, yada yada yada. And the question will come, well, we've got 2 workers to 1 old person, I think is the ratio they're projecting versus what it was at the moment, which is 4 or 5. And this is where I see the amelioration of that issue, is that AI will help support the reduced population, working population. But the question from a taxation perspective will be, what are we going to tax? Are we going to tax the worker? Or are we going to start taxing the AI agents?
Yeah, it's interesting.
That's where I see the next battlefront will be.
That's a whole podcast as well in itself.
Well, it is, and we're probably already.
We probably are. Just one last thing, and I said that the subject of whether or not AI is going to take over our jobs is a really big one. Up until only a very recent period, we were telling clients, pretty much like, AI is cool. It's supplementary. It's going to assist. It's augmentation. No, don't lay anybody off. Also, but what I've seen recently is that absolutely AI has the potential to replace workers, and particularly those objective, we've got a whole bunch of rule sets to achieve, we've got a whole bunch of things to check out, we've got offshore teams that are doing this. Absolutely, it can replace it. So my suggestion to anybody watching, all the 22,000 people watching this, is going to be, irrespective of what you think, AI is only getting, we're 2 years into it, and we're seeing so much. Where we're going to be in 10 years' time, what you have to do is start embracing and understanding and amalgamating with AI, and start becoming a specialist and using it to augment what you do, rather than because your role is potentially in a position where it could possibly be replaced.
Exactly what I was getting to, because let me give you an example of how that's affecting us today, not from an AI, but a similar scenario, right? So today, right, in the accounting space, and I'm sure this exists in many others, right, we have a labour shortage.
Yeah.
Right, so we've got a labour shortage now, which we've had many conversations about, Daz knows about, we've spoken about before. The question is, why do we have a labour shortage right now? Right, why? It's not just because of COVID and the mass resignation that existed off the back of it. It's because of that. Also, it's come off the back of, in the accounting space, right, over the course of the last 10 years, right, in the last 8 to 10 probably, there's been a massive push towards outsourcing, right?
Yeah.
Now, outsourcing, what gets pushed outsourced, right, first, right? It's the easiest jobs. What are the easiest jobs? The easiest jobs are graduates, right? It's the stuff that you know is going to get reviewed anyway, right? So 10 years ago, graduate roles started getting pushed offshore to the Philippines and India from Australia, right? And so therefore, the pool of people that were graduates 10 years ago that should be intermediates now doesn't exist in Australia, right? And it doesn't exist to the extent that it should, because the pool was diminished by 50%, 60%, 70%. So now, all of the firms, right, are now trying to say, well, why can't I find a great intermediate that's done 5-6 years of accounting work and tax work, and I want to bring them in, because the ones that are good have been soaked up by the good firms, the big firms, the ones paying more, the ones everything. And I say this because this is the same thing that's going to happen with AI. So when you talk about your strategic planning, right, the normal cycle of an employee, right, or a team member in any business and any part of that business is you start, you build, and you learn, and then you become the seniors, the managers, the partners, based off your experience, right? But now we're chopping out the bottom, right? We're chopping out the bottom, right, of everything, which means that the learning process has stopped and has been given to AI.
Once again,
right?
I think this is disruptive.
Yeah. And so then how do you offset that?
Once again,
to
I
have
agree.
I agree.
How do you offset that to make sure that these people can then become the top dogs?
Right. So how do you have the
I don't know the
amazing
answer to that, but it's definitely been a question that I've been posing myself.
Yeah.
Because we do look at the university system, and there's a whole discussion there on what they're teaching them, for starters, because there seems like there's a lot of information that they receiving, which really isn't relevant to the workflow. But even still, even if someone is really good at that, it's like, are you able to compete with an AI coming straight into the workforce? And I'd argue probably not.
No,
at that lower level. So should you be investing in the person or the AI?
The tech.
Exactly. So this is why I say
AI,
AI, as it stands currently, is not for profit. Your increased efficiency is not profit for the partners, directors, bosses to take. It's to reinvest into reskilling the people that are in the business, or you want to be in the business, or to find the people that you need to bring in the business that are going to be able to embrace the technology.
I suppose this,
to get to the next
this
level.
is really interesting. I've got a question for you. I'm not the host of the podcast, but I've got a question for you.
No, it's him.
Yeah. So the dichotomy is: do you invest in the people or the tech?
Well, and this is the thing. But I think it has to be both. It has to be both, right? Because you must invest in the tech. That is fundamentally.
You must invest in tech.
You must invest in the tech, but
there's an argument. I think there's an argument that's playing out at a level which is far above the business space. I think this is a governmental space because it comes down to the fabric of a society. Do societies want people who are employed, earning money, and able to pay tax? Or do they then want to tax businesses and AI agents? What is it going to be? I think there's
already some little things that are showing us the way the government is thinking, right? I mean, there's a tech boost.
Yeah.
Right? So when you invest in technology now that is better, they give you an extra deduction.
I think they're doing that just
I don't
to
know
save their skin. I think they're just doing it to save the Australian skin.
Yeah.
Of course,
rather than the future prospect that this is our tax base.
Yeah.
But I do suspect that going forward that it's not going to be the employee
No, but what I think
That
to
will
your
be
question
taxed.
is that yes, you must invest in the technology. Sorry, to your question, when you must invest in the technology 100%, right? But no business should not invest in its people. It doesn't matter how good technology
Question is why.
but which people are you going to invest in becomes the question.
No, but
So hang on.
Yeah.
So
Sorry,
then,
go
so then
finish
the
up.
investment in the people now comes with a bigger description, right? It's not just because they're an accountant, right, or just because they're this. It's their ability to adopt the technology and their knowledge. So now it's like, well, I'm going to invest in people that I know are going to be able to do both things.
You're
right?
looking at that from a business perspective, and
Yeah,
I
absolutely,
appreciate that.
Absolutely.
I'm looking at the next step up from a governmental perspective, and it's like I sit there and go, do you want people with idle hands doing nothing, just taking a universal basic income, or do you want people that are motivated, have a purpose in life, can actually achieve something, can be part of the outcome?
And now we're talking about this is a very big
No, it is. But once this is a massive
We're
rabbit
talking
hole.
about the fall of democracy and.
But once again, like AI, I think has the
Yeah.
potential to be so disruptive
I
in
think it
that
does too.
space, and I think a lot of people have thought about.
I think there needs to be a degree of separation from SME space versus big business space. Because, for example, in McDonald's, they're testing out a fully automated via AI drive-through system.
And you think about all those
Yes.
kids. I got my first start going and working at McDonald's.
Exactly, and they're going to replace that entire process. I mean, you look at production lines for massive manufacturing companies, that's basically robotic.
Yeah.
They're already
This is why
injecting
I
the
talk
process
about the
and manual.
shift, right? Because in your example, someone who needed to be in McDonald's
To start to
start
learn,
their career.
to
I was
understand how
KFC.
businesses work.
I was
what the
KFC and
pressures
then,
are.
and then Woolworths, which was Safeway in Victoria, right? But now
Was it a
those,
safe way?
hey,
Not when he was there.
now there's those. Now there's those kids, right, or young people, right, that
Kids,
aren't going to.
Are you being PC?
Aren't going to McDonald's, right? But actually could work in an accounting firm.
Age,
Right, because-
age not
Age
challenged.
Well, hang on, listen, because
Sorry.
they can use the technology to develop the first part of a process as good as a graduate because the technology has replaced the skill set,
100%.
right? So
Correct.
all they have to do is be able to adopt the technology and do it to hand it over to someone who is then the skilled person in that industry. So it's a movement, right? And this is why I'm talking about
Disruption.
It's a
But
disruption.
It's
but-
disruption.
and so this is why I say people need to be investing in people that are going to be able to embrace technology to move a business forward. So that the
Agreed.
requirement of an accounting firm to have all accounting-based skill sets is disappearing, right? And now you need technology-based just as much as you need accounting.
Yeah. But I
Right.
think that's a natural proclivity of every generation
Absolutely.
that comes after the one before. I mean, we can see already with this younger generation, and I'm
Me.
generally pointing quietly to our director in the background there, who's an incredible individual and who is obviously of a younger generation than we are.
Carly's 42, she's just moisturised.
You are heinous. I would never cross that line. You do not look past
All right,
41.
well,
I mean,
we better
wrap up.
we better wrap it up at that point. Yeah. Thank you everybody for watching, and I know there's a lot of you, but thank you very much. Chris, do you want to?
Sorry.
Yeah.
To our sponsors, Cragmore.
And also,
Like and subscribe.
thank you. Thanks everybody.
Done.
Jesus Christ.